Kali, Kali Durga Ma.
Om Mata 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 Kali,
ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्
Yo, have white light, read human rights, cosmic thoughts when fed up wise, mindless and ruthless when I write strong. The universe spin the thunderstorm. Speak to your mind, body and soul, split lyrics beyond duality. Energy of Zen mentality. Who's and moon when I am heartbroken. Please move and detach from hatred, wicked and peace. See now you at bliss. Kiss the holy nectar of peace. Lift of the Bodhidharma tree. Flee from material world. Wish happiness to all sentient beings. We human beings with wings. Talk speeches, studies, stone tablets. Believe when you bleed. Seize nature is the only vegetation. Supreme meditation. I blast at night, light, ignite mind with the spirit. Namah Shivaya Cha Shivataraya Cha. Chanting for God in syllables. Gnostic, mystic, and ancient African sword man of wisdom. A king and kingdom of astral world. Etheric body projection. Good and bad fall in the same pool like yin yang. My heartbeat sound like a prophecy magnetically. Electricity originates in my blood proton. Electron vibrates my light body chakra fields. Feel the sun particle dwell in the human skin. Cast this unholy business appointments a disappointment to the spirit. Cultivate medulla oblongata and study harder. My art divine order force against disorder in my anahata. Was there?
Introduce myself, I was born in SA more than 30 years back. Grew in a neighborhood covered in sweater camps. Each and every corner symbolizing usage of crack. Ain't no day and no night and this place is the same. Ain't no dreams out of chase, inspiration is pain. Yet this place I call home is a terrible shame. Hopes to change, miracles are out of the page. I had to survive, invite peace, challenge the mind by closing my eyes and broad streets open inside. Fought with the dark and battle on my luminous night. I'm used to this vibe, especially there wasn't no time. Mantra chanting, then eye illumination. Astral traveling, mental enthusiastic. Under the tree of Bodhisattva meditating. Disrupt someone else's case I forgot to mention.
Well, fuck the system. It's backwards. Oh shit, it's backwards. Why's it backwards? Has it always been backwards? It was upside down, so maybe that's why. Anyway, alas, one second. Okay, cool. So, I have lots of stuff I could talk about, but I thought I'd talk about Shaligrams because I was looking, it's been 6 months. I was talking about these every day practically. Like, at least once a week, frequently. And then tariffs happened. And the online, like, sharing of images through shops was basically, like, smashed. Very little Shaligram comparatively. Compared to pre-tariffs, the frequency of new Shaligrams has greatly diminished. which sucks because it includes new images. But it's been 6 months, so like they've accumulated enough. I've got this many tabs open of just Rudraksh Guru. Shaligram images. And I'm gonna try to burn through okay, where's the pen? Burn through some stuff. I meant to open Photoshop. Where? Speaking of burn through some stuff, oh lord. Pen. What the fuck is it? Oh man. Pen. I don't see it anywhere. I usually have it like right here. I kind of cleaned my desk off, but I don't think I moved it off of the desk. What the fuck? Nor do I know where I would have put it. Well, fuck. I guess, yep, still not under the keyboard. Behind the keyboard. Not in this thing. Oh, maybe it fell. Something fell. I couldn't figure out what it was. I was hoping it was a pen, but I don't see it. I also don't see whatever fell. It's super useful for a Shaligram discussion. I've been making only Middle East videos. Highly recommend looking at the evidence that kind of pertains to the end of my documentary video, which began with Shaligrams, and it's all kind of interconnected in some way. So let's pull up this folder and then go to Shaligrams, scroll down. I think it's pretty early. Why do I look at these, and why do I insist to people that it's important? I guess. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I think of like my recent videos to not talk about some things that pertain to the Middle East, and that I've seen since my last recording on there, and I'm just desiring to look more to like get a better bearing on what exactly is going on. It's fucking heinous, or it's all movie. I don't. So the general gist. I'm like, don't be a game that I've been playing. Game is fucking ridiculous. The general gist is that ammonites, all of this, including the ammonite, is the product of current flows, and specifically water flows that were high pressure. So they basically yielded a situation of just surrounding pressures into places where currents, water-based, were flowing, but not just water, including the physical grains that these stones are comprised of. Generally equal pressure, but obviously like not equal because certain locations seem to be inlets. So like those are the places most susceptible to an outside pressure inflow at these inlets, that then a greater current, because I know where it happens on the stone, comes in on the side over there, and where the ammonite basically wraps around, and the surrounding pressures just contain it, where there's also an exhaust. Maybe over here, I haven't thought about an exhaust on this stone, but maybe it kind of went out this way. I don't know. I'm not completely sure the exhausts are like necessary or just a tendency that's common. But so what happens is the grains flow through an actual flow pattern where they go down a drain basically in this chunk of material. As we come back, we'll get to how they like arrive going down here. So they go down here and they end up going through what's called the chakras. The chakra being the imprint of the ammonite here, and then an upper chakra on this side, the upper face here. So it goes through the chakras and down to the bottom, but it doesn't just go down, it also eddies. I'm not sure if it's that way. Yeah. Eddies like this. In the stone though, like the base is having the material expand outward as much as it can, but then when it comes back here, it runs into the inlet and it basically forces it up and around the eddy that's happening to then come back through the top. So if we look at this stone from different angles, we can see it better. Like this flows around and comes through here like this, like a conduit, where there's an inlet pressure here that then is flowing like an eddy into this surface, but then some of it goes over here and instead interacts in this plane because of whatever reason with the pressure exactly. That's where it's energetically preferential to actually form a larger eddy. Over here it was trying to, but it was more able over here. Then it produces an eddy that reaches back to a point, it enlarges so much that it actually is in opposition to the original inflow, which then is all part of how this is happening. But in this case is exemplary because it shows the flow. And if we look at like here, and so a current is flowing into this face right here, wrapping around where it actually cuts into the stone. And instead of like cutting it down this way, it preferentially went this way and eddied in this space. where then it grew large enough to actually run back into where it's eddying over here. Probably in a counter rotation. It's coming in, or maybe not. But then as the grains go through here, they go up, and then we can see all these like flow patterns, like a wave crashing, literally. Wave crashing, and then pressures in here holding the boundary and shaping the interactions that then fed down through the chakra and formed the base that came out here and wrapped around, and then as it wrapped around, it started to straighten, like 1, 2, 3, instead of being so ammonite like continuously. It bends off, and it kind of extends while straightening the edges though. And then over here the current's coming in to this face here as it's extending over to it this way. So it's creating these like knuckles in just the matrix that this ammonite was held within, which is how it works in some kind of like energetic sense, where the flow goes through the base and then to the top and through the base and cycles, and the outside pressures of the currents and the flows of the currents that are also not just holding pressure, they're flowing along the surface, not just shaping it but eroding it in many cases in ways that are proof, really. It's all what's so like amazing about these stones is they contain proof of the process that is in like all of their nuances. Like when it does branches off of one ammonite, that one wasn't like the best example, but where they thread together like currents do, create like recessive, like this could be a lobe to an ammonite, but it's recessive because it didn't really form, where these are more dominant in the like in this region of the stone. An eddy in this plane was the dominant flow pattern, whereas over along these surfaces it was more along the surface, interacting with other currents in the same way as this eddy, where there's probably an eddy, like generally current maybe just coming around from the other face to through here, that was kind of being caused to bend, so it had like a head of the arc that started to go maybe along the equatorial region of the stone, because the like the tall side is this way. These are like the poles of the stone that form because it's currents that are basically producing fractal iterative fundamental systems that we see in other scales as galaxies and solar systems and atoms. And in this case is documented in their every detail. So that's the introduction I want to give to kind of jump into why we're looking at these. And I don't know what we're gonna find. I like quickly open them. I was hoping to draw atop them as I kind of thought it out. Like here's an instance of kind of a recessive, like there's a relationship between this down here and this boundary that just tends to happen. Also, like the way it goes in and makes a chakra here, it's kind of doing it here as well as having these striations more so right there. as if it was like creating literally a chakra here and a chakra up here with like the next lobe starting over here. But recessively it just didn't do it. But if it did do it, it could be so much so that this becomes the dominant ammonite eddy, the dominant eddy in the space that includes this space, where it literally cuts underneath and strips this away and removes it and reshapes the stone to have chakras here, where then we're looking at a stone with chakras here. But that's not what happened. It's just what could be based on other stones. Some curious thing there. It looks like the side of an ammonite, I guess. Again, like a chakras here. I know it's kind of ridiculous sometimes. Little face. No. Got a little. I'm doing features around eroding, like extending. Like if this ammonite went into another lobe, maybe it would go like here. Maybe even back here in this area. Like it's trying to create a larger structure. It has enough energy to do more than just the ammonite that's obvious, but not enough to actually create the final result. It looks like it kind of eddies here and erodes underneath the layer. Again, like right there, like smaller eddies. Maybe one in there, maybe one here even. Here. This one also is super red, orange. Like it doesn't have much, looks like a Ninja Turtle. Much, shale remaining. I guess it's got iron. Not the most common color of shaligrams. Okay, so that one's got some cool stuff. This one's crazy. Just like a lake. Like maybe a waterfall eroding an area and then draining away. Where an outside current was holding general pressures that, like, if this boundary continued over here, but where current got under that outside pressure and was able to create some kind of, I guess it went like down here and kind of waterfalled this way, but excess drained off this way and kind of like created a bladder to help push it through. Well, it really makes me think like that's maybe what's going on with chakras. A lot of times in the lobes to the sides of the chakras, which we don't really have a picture of here, over here and here. A lot of times when there's actual features, stone still there, not just a void at the surface, like continuously, there's erosion paths that go up and down striations. Well, So maybe that's kind of akin to what's happening here with this like waterfall side. That's then trying to like erode out around ultimately to produce an ammonite, like a more structured eddy. But instead it went this way and kind of just created this erosional path, but maybe it was trying to produce chakras, where then it would suggest that there's a tendency in chakras to have like a flow, a cross flow, like a perpendicular with the plane of the ammonite along one side of one of the lobes, and then the other lobe as more of a like bladder side where what couldn't go down went to the side and filled up pressure over there, but also produced a lobe ultimately, if functionally producing an ammonite structure. Super cool. I could definitely look at this one a lot more. Like, that looks kind of like chakras, lobe. The general shape of these being long, like ovals. Sometimes interacting with each other. Oh shit. Some like streaks here also. Almost makes me think of the ribs of the ammonite. Like if it produced an ammonite and not just this like odd feature, like it could have, instead of going just straight down, they could have more bent to carve ribs that maybe even like that kind of looks like some chunky I don't know what to call this. It's not turd. Shit. Almost like chambers of an ammonite, potentially. Like if it had the energy over here instead to actually do it, maybe swirl in there. Super cool. This one I thought was interesting for these. They're so defined. That's all I saw when I opened this, I can't remember. Again, kind of doing a chakra right here. With tears over here. Super subtle. Looks kind of like a phoenix or something. Like eyeball, head, wing, and like the freaking breath of light of the phoenix out of the mouth. I don't know. Oh, even a talon over here, and another one in like the shaded structure. Oh shit. Super cool. Wow. Definitely some interesting patterns. Looking like stars. all with their own little polygons. Just like a shadow of a chakra in lobes. And then again, chakras, like, which one's gonna win? Interesting opening. Some other features, but let's go. Okay. Super cool. I don't want to get too caught up on this one, but it looks like it could be all sorts of things. Like, again, a chakra lobe, like just tendency. Just in case kind of thing. Like a test in the waters. Another just eroded, so like it's stripped of the shale as water passed through and took this finer grained black shale from the stone, or in times pulling it through, like into pushing it in and through, but ultimately out to strip the other materials of all the black shale that coats them, to then create this like erosional pattern that happens where all these are just like more eroded. Something was driving erosion of the currents that were shaping all of the stones also to do the more eroded spots. Like, you can see the striations here, they even bend up, but along it, and even like wrapping to be parallel. Where down here they're more just parallel looking, what I can see, which is more in the shale, but it seems to be up there too. Another fist and freaking teeth. Looks like a cat species. Nose here. Feline. Cool. It's like connecting to over here. It looks like this is a chakra, and it's eroding this way, and these are just interacting. Related also to this, like this could cut into the stone and eddy, but it just didn't. Instead, it just kind of cut into the stone and went along it and interacted, possibly with cross currents, because it's like pole to pole. Again, because of the length. Generally, the poles are the long lengths, and then the equatorial structure is along the narrow length. And how shaligrams tend to be when they really exhibit like a polar behavior, which means like equatorial currents would be along, basically perpendicular. So this is going polar and interacting with perpendicular currents. It looks like really defined, like in up here, and kind of subtly up here we see like a line go through here. Possibly in this being blocky, it's hard to say, but maybe even blocky, but like blowing in the wind almost. Like pressures from this eddy that are pushing out, that are influencing the generally, like, I guess increasing latitudinal parallel lines of flow that just wrap around like a coil, top pole to pole, and then kind of plug in pole to pole, as well as have inflow outflow possibly plug in from an inflow and out at the outflow, I guess, rather than a closed loop. I'm not sure. I can even see the striations over here, kind of in the way this ammonite is. Like where it's most prominent seems related to the cross currents of the equatorial flow patterns. Again, with just like a definition of an ammonite structure, and then all these like potential boundaries that were kind of being forced into being because it wasn't really able to push out to here, but it was kind of creating these generally parallel lines. And then in this area, it's kind of seeming like it's past the margin of this. Like maybe this flow is related to this, and maybe it was going more this way, where this is kind of pushing out the boundary this way. So maybe this region is more so going this way. In the external and also in internal flows of how this was happening ultimately, at times cutting in like a razor cut. Like it's going this way, but then it bends and is going more this way, where this also is like more subtly not going quite in line with that. Like it bends generally here, and then I see this and it makes me think some kind of pressure is like pushing this from like especially here over, where it's like going this way and it's interacting at a margin. There's so many cool flow patterns on these striations, like over here, stuff down that way, but also across. This Shaligram's insane. This shirt's not fitting quite as well anymore. For not because it's shrunk. Eddy here. Exit flow here that then manages to get into the stone. More than likely, but also exits here, like with, I guess, going like this and around and eddying, but where it was applying a pressure this way. Thanks there, buddy. How do I get, I swear I blocked that friggin' term, viewers. Lame. It's fucking there. Like, why is it not working? Muted. Views, viewers, viewer. Fucking viewers. He said viewer. It said viewers. And it still got through. Weak. It looks almost like it's not standard lettering to avoid that shit. Sons of bitches. Oh my god. So chakra looking thing, like right there is like a top, possibly also over here. counter chakra there. But where this is the dominant chakra, the center of the eddy is dominantly there, but it also recessively was happening here. Maybe it seems like kind of as science interprets ammonites to like live in the final chamber. I think it's that the eddy kind of moves to the final chamber, so it has a tendency to actually have the capacity to reshape the entire surroundings. But it doesn't always do that. It's frequently it's just kind of there. Makes me think of this all reshaping the surroundings. Final chamber. Whenever it's noticed. Again with this like just a subtle erosion inward that creates tiers to a chakra shape over here and divides it from the bottom of a counter chakra, where this also is abnormal erosion because it's near the edge. So this eddy is happening higher up, that's centered at a higher plane and is extending into adjacent planes. But it's extending into this area of the stone where it's more interactive, I guess, to cause it to erode higher, so it's literally not in line. Trying to get a good picture. Was that a... Don't think this is it, maybe. Oh yeah. This is it. And it connects over there, so it's the one that connects that one? No. We see striations going this way. Maybe some features that like going this way, where they then kind of go across this way, like hair, like long hair divided. I don't know if that's real or just in the imagery. Couple more striations kind of creating, I might have pointed that out already, creating like additional tier of a chakra, but just not doing it fully. This one's cool. So we've got that like current flow throughout the stone that's eroded, especially here, but interestingly it's maintained shale here and down here, where this is like super normal looking, as if that was like a pressure point from the outside. Maybe a current came in and actually created like a bladder type thing here, that then allowed the inflowing current to actually get into the stone, float in, eddied here, but it didn't erode the surface, maybe, because it's a little bit odd. And maybe even just the whole, like, the bladder is like the whole ammonite structure, where it like applies pressure but also blocks it, holds stuff in generally, except for when it manages to exceed the bladder's pressure and cut through anyway. So then it comes out along margins and starts to actually shape the matrix I don't know. So then this one over here, interestingly, it looks like it bends. Like it bends up. Super curious. That's just fossils having millions of years to kind of reshape and mold to one another, but maintain their shapes otherwise. Oh, shoot, and chambers. So we got that chamber thing happening, but more defined. Which is interesting because I was in that one we were looking at, the thing that said looked like a turd. That was kind of like chambers. I was thinking there was an eddy to the side of it, and it kind of makes sense that like chamber type structures would be forming that then are like the bladders to then provide enough pressure into a region to actually erode into it, where then it's able to actually eddy, and just more so it collectively forms an overall ammonite shape. That's interesting. Look how far apart, like it super comes close. I guess it could be said if the stone extended enough it would look normal. I don't know. Then it continues, and then it fucking jumps over. What? Like it, clearly, if we ignore this, like this structure here is over here, beyond here, so that's a bit odd. Oh, we've got this. Another ammonite. Notice as this like straight line approaches, it starts to go left in this area, in like a bladder region, and then it cuts through left. Like current was generally flowing along this path and pushing it, so and stopping it from just cutting through. Like if it was strong enough, it would have just cut through that current, but it wasn't. But it was fed by back currents that were flowing through and cutting into the stone, creating this. But then as they approach that, maybe even contributing to bending it from going like this way to bend. Where it's like running into it in part, as well as other currents, but where like the bladder is kind of in line with its final direction here before it's actually going this way generally. And then cuts it over though, and then it kind of bows out and then goes the other way. So if current's going this way here, then it would be going this way, so it would be pushing this way. But then when it comes back the other way, it would be pushing this way. Where there's generally an actual like return of the same current in cases where the ammonite structure kind of stops like that. Super cool. Also some chakras looking to be just trying to form there a little bit. Just hanging out, another ammonite below. Some other odd features. We got cross things. Like a general, more than an eddy influencing this was going on. This was happening. Something maybe wrapping around larger scale was happening. Dividing the stone, so that's like a pole. Pole. Because it's dividing the stone, that's how it tends to happen, is cut it down the middle or some other divide, depending on how it's shaped. Or even multiple divides. Or it's cut into blocks by like squeezing currents that had nowhere to go but into the stone, so they cut the stone. But then they didn't just kind of do a little erosion path. They literally managed to divide the stone enough for it to be cut apart, and other currents to join behind, and it to reshape like two separate systems. Or to not reshape, or sometimes to have ammonites formed in ammonites. Some oddities happening here. That almost belemnite looking shape there, that probably is. Again with the like shaping of the ammonite happening in the erosion. Deflected path over here, like it's squeezed down. Looks like it slightly skips between here. Another one there, looking like a sun or pyramid with rays. Like a pyramid sun. Makes me think of Egyptian stuff. So cool, like the subtle pyrite gold color. There's a... oh, it looks like a straight up chakra. What? This is like belemnites. That's fucking nuts. I'm looking for a good example like this. Kind of like this is not the best example, but where it has this little protrusion, and then where the pole, because the current's wrapping around the stone, like here, they're wrapping around pole to pole, but they're wrapping around this in layers of a coil, like essentially, that's going to the poles, and when they reach the poles, they've covered the entirety of the stone with this coil. So because they're under extreme pressure when this was happening, outside pressures like this, it's frequently more lower pressure to just cut into the stone and erode at the pole. But specifically doing so where like the pole itself is kind of like a pin and the current is wrapping around it, and then at some point it cuts in before it and actually erodes an eddy to the side of the pole frequently. So these are instances where it did it. Kind of doing it there, creating a evidence of that outside current. I'm looking for one that is kind of the best one. Where is it? I might have passed it. I feel like it was early. That's why I was going so slow. Oh yeah, super early. Too soon still, like right here, like the pole, right to the side of the pole. Maybe even that thing is kind of like at the pole. I never really thought of that. Like its back is to the pole and it's facing forward like a pillar, like a Egyptian god type pillar structure though, facing forward towards the sun or whatever, the eddy center. But where there's evidence of the wrapping around currents in the stone, so that's kind of what this is, one of those belemnite shaped structures, and then it looks like it's got a super sharp chakra down there, and like actually a chakra. I wonder if there's a chakra subtly on the backside of this. Like what? Oh my god. Is it actually a chakra? That might be the only image of this location. Oh, I was hoping that that would happen. Now to remember where it was. I don't remember. Oh yeah, this thing. How do I slow this down? Oh shoot, I went back a lot. Wow. Super cool. You can see kind of a pole-to-pole current going on here. It's insane that it's got this like remaining chunk where maybe a current was flowing through here and like held resistance enough to actually maintain the structure so it wasn't eroded while around it. It more cleanly eroded it. Cause that's crazy. Go away, pause. Incredible Shaligram. I guess that's it there. Yeah, that's it. Like, what? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Oh, this is the other face where I was thinking maybe a chakra was visible. No. I mean, maybe some, like a tier and then like a lowest point at the center here kind of thing. I guess super subtly, but not like a full-blown chakra. Crazy. Now I'm just staring at it from all these angles. Rip. Teeth of an ammonite. Ripples that kind of branch off of this thread. It seems to maybe be related to a lobe's cross current. Okay, this one's incredible, and I could look at it forever. I don't know how long I'll look at this one, honestly. Because it kind of just looks like an imprint and another ammonite on top, and I guess that's the only angles we get. What can I click? I gotta play something else. Oh, I got 3 minutes. Okay. Some subtle erosion paths in here that are curious. But let's look at some others. These are kind of chaining. Even that one. This one, bottom right, has boundaries that kind of push out the boundaries. But in terms of relative to the right one, it up until the right one, and then over starting at the left side, it goes down relative to this, like just going across. It goes down and creates like an extension of the lobe that seems to kind of go off this way even, and doesn't really have a defined wraparound, where it seems to have gone down because of the pressures of this, but similarly going left to right, and this left bunch actually goes up where the pressures of the right one is pushing it up. And similarly as well over here, maybe this one is tilted more because these are kind of wedging in between the two. Maybe because it's preferential for there to be like a staggeredness of them, instead of like on top one another in terms of how the eddies space within a given surface, because this is all generally on a flat surface here. Like where it bends off is where the light kind of shows the bend, especially, so we can see like it's generally flat here, like that. Not sure, was that it? No. Yeah, super flat. And then this side less flat. This is this. The right side, that is. And the top is looking at that thing. Looks kind of like a bear, koala, eyeball, nose. Also kind of like a koala or something. Extending off of this one over here, it's definitely interaction, but not like where it's one system anymore. Can see this threaded off this way. Even like it darkened the stone because it was removing the material here and shoving it this way. I don't know. Because it's kind of like if it's stripping here, it would seemingly it should strip over here in the path away from it. But it almost gives the impression it is actually bringing the stripped material with it because it can't get through otherwise. So just going through with the stripped material. it can't get through anywhere else. But in order to get through, it has to push the material that it isn't able to exhaust elsewhere. I guess is what I'm saying. Maybe. To explain that, there's a bit of a chakra center eddy happening over here. Maybe a chakra there. Notice it kind of stops at the boundary. This one actually wraps around the boundary onto that face. It's like koalas everywhere. Or something. Maybe not that one, but... Again, pole to pole, left to right in this case. And then equatorial coiled currents that are visible on the surface here. That are then interacting with more polar currents, I guess. We see like a roundedness, so if current's coming around here, it's like almost like carving like a river here, where it's not just rounded normally, it's actually rounded in, which suggests the current went through here, and based on these, it suggests it generally went this way. To go maybe more so to the pole, like, or the opposite side of the pole. Like, here's the pole, so maybe trying to wrap over here, maybe ultimately wrapping over here where it goes across here and goes around this, up over this way, to then run into more resistance over here where it interacts all along the way, holds the margin in this one. Bends the current that way, but then it causes resistance, where the current around this face is probably then going this way, well, but more gently sloped to go like pole to pole, like creating a general X pattern in crossing currents that then interacted, and also interacted in layers where it went this way, but maybe it also or it went across, including in this area, but where this one had like an off current that went more like this way. From just basically the first segment, kind of across here, including subtle markers that seem to maybe suggest there's a interaction across this way. Where it's more like fingers ultimately that are pole to pole than just individual cross currents that are interacting, that then also interact with the coiling currents around the stone equatorially, and then they get to the pole, they have nowhere to go, so they make an eddy, ammonite in this case. Is that the same one? I think that's the same one. Sometimes it can have it on both ends, and it might be on both ends, and even over there. Third opening. I guess that was it. Okay. This one's super cool because it looks like it was at a pole. Although it's hard to say if it's actually a pole. It looks more on the flattened faces. Maybe it was at a pole, and then like the stone experienced enough pressure compressing it where it became not the pole, like the poles moved more to the long axis, and this became more like the equatorial. I mean, this stone is super rounded though, maybe corroborating it was more elongated and compressed. But where essentially the polar current that was trying to drill in did so in a way that it actually shaped a more typical looking drill of the pole, like the one we were just looking at, like this. Like, it kind of does one of these appearances. But it has a full-blown ammonite in there. I thought it was really super cool. That's pretty much that one, though. This one's got threaded currents, I can say that already. Like, creating a freaking rectangle or triangle. Cool. Extending out this way, but then just branching off. Oh, that's just totally normal. Nothing to see here, obviously. Like, look at that branching. That looks mathematical. Parallel with that one. And then, like, over here, there's a boundary that is quite in line with the beginning before it, like, bends. Like, the more it bends, the more it looks like it almost goes just beside it, but maybe interacts with the flow along this margin that's wrapping around. It looks like it's wrapping around this way because it's, like, coming out here and then goes down and across this way, maybe, to then interact with flows out of here that were branching off for whatever reason this way. And then again, like a parallel thing here going on, like over here. Whoa. That's crazy. Crazy. Like, similar branching here too. To how it did it there. Okay, that upper one, I guess, is this one that's starting to extend a lobe out. That's crazy. Like, this ammonite was actually extending up here and creating a bigger structure that suggests it was also trying to push down this way and kind of go out further, maybe even here. This surrounding definitely has patterns in it that maybe suggest an eddy centered here. Our current was flowing out of this eddy along a typical margin, basically. Like, it's got a ramp or whatever, something to gain momentum along, and it's just flowing, and then it runs into resistance right here, where it overflows and influences the surroundings of these surface currents to eddy generally here, maybe. Maybe even just straight up go up this way. Where current's like flowing down over here so that it divides, where there's generally flow going down this way and then generally flow going up this way. Maybe another eddy type thing going on there. like stuff like this is all over these stones. I haven't looked extensively at these specific ones, but they're all pretty well documented in the video. The link seems to be visible, and just the imagery can be viewed. This chakra looks like it's super odd. It wants to go down, but it's got like a more balance point, and like that there. It seems to have ribs. I mean, I guess it's possible this is like a super eroded compared to how it would have been more pristinely or whatever. Also, power right over here suggests this is like the final chamber where the eddy is shifting to. Cross currents creating chambers. Kind of like a tilted eddy, but where it's related to the actual surface pressure below it. Like it's sitting on something almost. Not necessarily solid, but like pressures that are effectively solid. So it's like sitting on it, and this eddy that's forming in it forms at an angle, as it frequently happens, but it still relates to the margin of pressure over here. That's how big the eddy can get. Definitely some interesting striations. Here. This is like way more in than this one. Like it's super soon. Whoa, did I just see that? I tried to zoom in. Like, look at that. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's how currents do, baby. Boom. Subtle, distinct proof they're shaped by currents is so fun to find. Oh, there it is, baby. Like it's clearly going up and around, up and around, up and around, and forming, maybe even there, like a tube or something that like wraps around between the two, because some eddy pressure was here, I guess. Almost like a finger smearing it out. I guess it could be argued it's some kind of smearing, but they're not actually conjoined. The amount of proofs I've found, though, it doesn't actually rebut it. It's just freaking disregards it. Crazy. Okay. Dude, it's like, talking about a revolution. Just freaking layers. This looks like it was trying to form like the teeth of an ammonite, like an imprint on a probably a way larger material that this is just a chunk of, possibly adjacent, like not happening in regard to the stone itself, but adjacent. Also, we can see a little squiggle here that kind of makes me think of, I forgot what they're freaking called. Suture patterns. And then another thing here, like suture patterns, that kind of suggests chambers were being formed where this stone as a whole was really recessively forming an ammonite-like feature that maybe even had like a center here that wrapped around where the chambers were off that way, and then like the final chamber was more over here leading to like this margin, and the actual ammonite appearing more in the final chamber, where these ribs are maybe related to that trying to happen, where like the ammonite as a whole here. I don't know. But it seems like it's different, like outside, and it's just cutting in. I don't know. Actually, no, it's definitely from this direction, because it's widening. Okay. Oh shoot, that's like a possibly copywritten song. Incredible. Oh, and then it's actually connecting. So instead of like forming a singular ammonite, it's breaking down into many eddies. Where one's here, one's kind of happening off of that, over here, etc. Another sign of a chamber. I don't know if we saw that one. Just cutting in like mad. Ah! Oh, forming these crinoid things or whatever they are. Different oddities over here. Cool. Laser beam, laser beam. Tiered thing here. Interesting that like the center is kind of where this is. That seems related to this ammonite forming. Other odd interactions. Super curious. This looks like a chakra right there. I don't know. It's definitely still part of this ammonite though. Like as we go out there and go out on this side, it basically goes to it, but it goes around it. Like there was a pressure inflow here that limited this eddy, especially along this face where it kind of cuts in and looks heavily cratered from cross currents. So it just literally deflects it down at that point. Kind of like maybe he was trying to reconnect here, but with like a weird shape where maybe it would have tended to flow more like into that shape if it just a less tall top chakra, but it had the space too in the first portion of the face, or of the lobes in the face, last portion of the face before it bends. Some other like shifting margin here. It wants to go larger, but then goes in. So I love how it's slice, 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 slice. Good example of pole to pole, and then equatorial currents that are kind of dividing the stone, where there's an ammonite there, back to back. And then this one is on one side, and maybe like this section is not eroded as much because it's like the equator being pushed and interacting with an equatorial current, which is just kind of stronger than the other locations. Just like the pole, it's where it converges at the equator as well. Then we see this ammonite just extending into like a freaking rainbow looking thing over here. So cool. Wants to extend and does so in weird ways, but then it slices up this way too. Which suggests maybe there's like a surrounding, or maybe current coming in somewhere that's wrapping around it in both directions, or just more so around it like this, but maybe along like this axis, like here. That's like why is it pointing at the pole? So cool. It's so cool. Oh man. And then just like the shale of the nucleus. Shaped and then just like block. It looks like it cut up and then cut a little bit lower and trying to like cut in. But then it cut even lower and actually got in it, and then went up and went around and interacted to kind of move some of this material over here maybe, but ultimately made it around, where then it got to the end over here and kind of wrapped around it first there, but then extended to wrap around there, where then it like held resistance here, so it didn't actually cut through. Some reshaping, like it's trying to make a chakra over here, a chakra here, in this area where the lobe is out further, and then use the left lobe essentially and cut away. So if this does it well enough, it could literally cut away like a freaking chunk that then is stripped away, and then we go like, maybe not this one, maybe not that one, we look at something, say this, we're like, ah, it's just a stone all by its lonesome. Don't no freaking clue. It was just cut away. I don't know if that was the best example, but cut away in a process like this. where a new chakra was literally created, and the old system was like a decay product. Shoot. So relevant. I like how it pseudo stops here, but then kind of continues over there. Threads. Threaded. Because fucking why not? Super subtly. Along pole to pole, basically. This point's possibly at the chakra. Kind of curves in towards it. Something's going on in there. It looks like a freaking exploding star. Nebula, gas cloud. Frozen in time. Fractally viewable. Shoot, how far are we? Hour 40. I'm going as fast as I can. I got, this is a funny thing, is I got a freaking playlist. $57 videos. I guess I'm not making it. I was like, this is probably dash 70 something. I was like, I don't think I've talked about any of these. Maybe some of them, probably, like a few. But the majority of these videos I haven't really mentioned. I've just been noticing them, and some of them are like, dude, I gotta talk about this. Okay, some more erosion stuff. I might stop soon, actually, seeing how much I have to go. It'd be nice to get this, these tabs down. Okay, that one's some subtle things going on for sure, like boundary here that wants to just continue, but goes down, and then like pockets of erosion at like needles where it's more eroded and then more eroded, like bladders that then allow for the current to progress. But in these cases, they're like flowing bladders that are the ribs themselves being eroded, both shaping the ammonite and the matrix that will contain the ammonite. By cutting in and out. It's possible this is flow coming out. Okay, that one's boring enough to just close it. Some more staggeredness, and like another one that kind of has like a general ammonite shape with some signs of like chambering happening, maybe. Looks like it was testing if it wanted to make a eddy this way almost energetically, like maybe this way. Somewhere I must be able to exhaust this pressure, it's saying. Flow around up this way. Cool. Super cool. Super. That one. Another. This one's got like a freaking. Looks literally like it's growing out of it. Growing out of it has a freaking pulled back skin or whatever, like an eyeball. Happening along some kind of eddy current that's going more around this way based on the patterns. So add an equatorial belt maybe type thing going on. That was going around the stone, but maybe opposite directions running into each other here where the compressed material is this structure to kind of divide it. It's got a little node there too. I don't know, and it generally pole to pole, so it relates in that regard. Actually, it's forming an ammonite in the process. That, I think. I guess the opposite side of this looks like this. I don't think there's two of them. Yeah. Okay, that one's strange, but cool. Wrote in a little further, kind of in and out, like a chakra. Cross current thing happening. Not the most evidence of it. I don't know if that was because of the oils they put on them sometimes. The like slick color almost looks like there was oil or water that was in these pores and kind of kept this area different. It's hard to say if it's actually how the stone is. Sometimes it like takes the black shale and deposits it and it looks different, more shiny. But in this case, it's just not that easy to tell. It looks almost like when it was eroding this one, it was like testing if it wanted to be the chakra, and this maintained the chakra to the point where it actually grew even larger. But it's got some kind of like divide and cross erosional thing and like chakra tiers structure to it that is retained from when it was testing, as well as other boundaries being tested as the pressures tried to find equilibrium in the process. Bunch of drill holes, ammonite obviously. Bit of a curved, like it doesn't really look, it looks more, I guess it's part of that one in like a, it would be kind of way, I don't know. It might be slightly skewed. This one's really good at showing the flow, general equatorial flow that I'm not sure ultimately is here and interacts also with another layer of it, and generally is still everywhere else. Just this is like the main point of interaction along this margin. Looks generally like a polar current was flowing like from the pole over here through and maybe over, like dividing the sides. So there's like a margin there. And then below that margin, this ammonite happened and this ammonite happened. And the way they're kind of folded upward, I guess would suggest maybe this bottom current is actually going upward in this region and like tries to go into an ammonite shape here, I guess. That maybe even subtly extends over here. In terms of holding this boundary, having some subtle shape there, this boundary being more defined. This subtle thing that generally threads up here though, where it like goes around and goes up to then continue here where it joins with the flow that actually went up in the first place, that then similarly divides, but more so goes left to go up, while some of it goes right and then into this eddy, but others cuts across and makes it a cross current of the polar current to then get beyond it and interact at another eddy, forming another ammonite type structure over there. Trying to find it. There. Divide, layering, and then even like showing some kind of relationship across the chakras down where there's even downward like that way. This one's super cool. Reminds me of one. You can definitely see things going on just across like the equatorial situation, where this is generally like really defined moments of it, maybe, of a banded current around it. I don't know if we see enough of the stone to trace this to see if it kind of reconnects. Just wraps around up to the pole here, where it's then got more erosion again. Cross currents happening, weaving their way down here. Down here. Down this way, like a chakra happening and feeding down. Super cool. No video to see any more of it. pole to pole, it actually is eroding into the stone here. You can see some like weird boundaries suggestive of like something cutting into something else and then not being able to, so it abruptly stops and takes a different path because it's erosion that's shaping every detail of these stones, as well as the transportation of the grains like we mentioned, where it's all pressure-based flows of water and the materials of the stones. Lots of cool stuff we see. Circular thing there, circular thing here. Like odd erosion patterns. Nothing dominantly happening like an ammonite like here. In that other section, that is. Interaction where like the boundary of this window is super related to the boundary of this. Why? Because time, erosion, and coincidence can do anything with enough stones. Anything. Anything. No, son. Nah. Oh, this one really could use more pictures. Darn. It's dividing into chunks. So it's got that going on, which kind of makes sense for it having 3 eddies. Like they're literally applying pressure into one another and trying to divide to the point where they can space apart, where they're dividing the matrix of the stone. It's hard to say what's going on with respect to each other in this. Like this one's weird. And I mean, we can definitely see the imprint of this left one goes up to it. Like, what the fuck? It looks very fluid with it. Some under erosions. What looks like different sized ribs, I don't know, than this. Maybe more like those, but then this like flows sideways, overlaying the chakra some. So strange. Like what? Wow, this chunk is crazy looking. Ammonite, 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 ammonite. Layer. Oh, so cool. But this one. Chakra. Center of lobe. Like, it's pretty in this center, I guess. Even though that looks to be a center, like a chakra there. Not sure. Oh no. Chakra was trying to happen outside of the stone here. With this is like the nucleus. And then center that. This general margin pointing up to the pole. Maybe this general margin then pointing down to the pole as well as that margin. Slightly staggered as the chakras tend to be. Just slightly staggered. This is crazy. All these like surface erosion patterns visible as well. Wow. Multiple layers of erosion even there. You can see how these striations are like the chakra. This is even forming an outer margin all the way out here, in spite of having all this other stuff on the other side that won't let it form a larger ammonite. Because it had the room on that side to do it. Some odd shapes going on this one. It literally extends beyond the chakra. It's beyond the center. It doesn't make any sense. Why does this ammonite have structure that extends beyond the center? I guess it's forward, so the idea, one might argue, is well, over top the center, it's actually behind it. It's not past it. Oh my god. It's definitely abnormal. Here's a circle. Erosional circle pattern here, that's odd. Possibly relating to why that's abnormal. Like it was trying to form a chakra here, like two chakras. One up, one down, that are generally center of this eddy. That then would have extended the top one over that way, more so. And would have just cut away some of this. Made it into parts of a ammonite if it was retained. This one I thought was worth noting because it has these branches off, as I found several times. This one, super weird. It's flat, goes flat across over here. Besides that, it goes up and back down. But that is flat with this, but then it goes down over. And then over on the top side, it doesn't go down and over, like down and over. And on the top side, up and over. It goes on the up side, it goes down and over. Like it could have formed chakras here. But it's just carving possible exit paths. This also looks kind of rounded like an ammonite. Like chambers, ribs of an ammonite. Strange. Like a tiny one in there. It seems to have like red spots. It's wow. Incredible. I know I have a couple that I can compare it to. Like this one. Center, top, bottom, 1/3, 2/3. And then I think there's another one, this one. Top, bottom, center-ish, 1/3, 2/3, and as well as bottom. So it's like doing multiple potentials out of the eddy to try to carve the next path to grow the eddy, because that's what it's preferentially forming. But it just didn't have enough material and space to grow a larger eddy, so it just cut these paths. And that was that. Okay. I've got two options. I'm 2 hours in. I could just stop for now. Or I could be back in like 10 minutes and take a break, but I think I'm just gonna stop. I might restart, but probably not. I mean, certainly would like to finish these. Something like 20 tabs plus those 55 videos or whatever. 57, I think it was. I got it. All these tabs. I don't have to wait. Peace out. Thanks for hanging out.